just wanted to drop this came to me while I was getting ready to start my work for the day, and I wanted to drop the message on it. Divine Rise. Blessed be to your day. May it be everything you require to let you know that you are deserving of all that you desire, but you are not entitled without the work. Understanding that this healing process is destructive because it is meant to build your immunity. You're building your immune system back up. You're building up that spiritual immunity. You're building up your immune system. And you'll know the stronger your immune system is becoming due to the power, the protection of alignment. A lot of times, we talked about this this week in the God Hour podcast. We got into that 0 point. If you're not familiar with the God Hour podcast, it's broken down. The session is broken down into 3 segments. The first segment, we talked about the beacons of loss. That means because of the, like what we talked about yesterday, going into the aspects of if ownership without accountability is possession. So naturally you stay within the lack mentality. The survival mentality builds up the physical immune system to what you need inside of that space while you're surviving. But as you're doing your internal work, the reason that it's so prevalent that when you're doing your shadow work and you're doing your purging and you're doing your releasing, and why it's so important to release, and when you're calling your energy back to you, you're defining the energy, you're taking all your energy back, not just the positive light energy that you send out, but you also taking back in all of the negative energy you put out. That means in the same instance, when you're taking your power back from being mistreated inside of a relationship, you got to take back all of the energy also for where you committed that same mistreatment. That's the only way that you can actually come into true alignment with. That's the only way you're going to be coming in that true alignment with yourself. Due to those beacons of loss, always beckoning what we lost, always trying to, we keep creating these beacons of loss. We keep overriding our natural sequence. And then we keep staying in this pressurized state that is based on resistance. So you think that think about it like this when you think about your immunity. Think about diplomatic immunity. Think about diplomatic immunity. Most of the times, every time I heard about diplomatic immunity, it was always some drug dealer in a movie, and he was untouchable because he did such and such and such and such for people. So like he could get away with certain things. But it is what your spiritual immunity is. Your spiritual immunity is based upon your work. Your alignment, that protection based on your alignment is based upon your work. So the more work that you're putting in on the internal sense, it's putting you, like, your immune system is building up, not based on where you are, not based on where you're at, but where you truly are with yourself. That means going into an aspect, take something as simple. You're protected from, let's use an example. You can burn sage in your house all day. You can have sage in your car. You can have Palo Santo all around the crib, all that. You can have all of this stuff to protect you, to protect your energy, to help you mind your energy, to help you build the defense system against your energy. But if you're not assessing the negative aspects that are within inside of self that are keeping you attracting these said energies into your space, then it does you no good to burn the sage. Like, you can sit there and burn sage all day. You can burn sage. You can put Hoppin' John on the floor. You can put the shit on your floor all day. You can put brick dust down. You can do all of this all day. But if you're not assessing your energy, and this one, we're going to get deep into this throughout this week, talking about assessing your energy. when you're not really doing the assessment of your energy, that means you're not taking an open inventory on your energy, what you're attracting. If you are stuck within a state of stimulation, a lot of these things are based on, because we talked about it in the podcast, these aspects of you're seeking stimulation for the lack of that energy within inside of yourself. So a lot of times people are trying to go get people are trying to go grab go put a pinnacle on, or you go try to grab what is another thing? You gotta grab a pinnacle, or you try to go get some oils, and you putting this oil on yourself, and you're anointing yourself, and you're doing this work, and then things start coming up, and then the only thing that you're saying is I'm protected. You're fucking up your immune system. You're fucking up your immune system. Just because you have that, with great power comes great responsibility. Let's put it like that. With great power comes great responsibility. So with your power and with you assessing yourself and you doing this internal work, you doing your shadow work, it comes with great responsibility. It was one thing for me to say earlier on in my shadow work that just because I knew that I was spiritually protected, but I'm still going into spaces that reflected war with my higher self, and I'm wondering why I'm still getting fucked up, even though the fuck up isn't as bad as I thought it would be. I'm able to get out of there a little. I'm able to get out of there a little smoother, or I'm able to maneuver a little more. That's when you get stuck in that resistance or that pressure to change. Your spiritual immune system, just like every other system, only can be assessed outside of your comfort zone. You don't know your immunity until you're outside of your comfort zone, until you're outside of that pain threshold. You don't know how much pain you've really endured until you are sitting on the outside looking at how much pain you actually endured. These are the aspects when you're thinking about your spiritual immune system. When you're thinking about when you're doing this internal work. When you're setting those tones, when you're putting yourself into play. Because a lot of the things that we think are immunities for, you're wondering why you did a protection spell based on you going to your job, and then all of a sudden you lost your job. It's because from the higher point, your job does no longer serve you. The energy that you got, the energy that you once obtained from that space no longer serves you. See, that's coming into the alignment with your higher self. That's coming in alignment with your authentic self. That's coming in alignment with your power. It's not going to be something like, oh my God, I'm at peace and I'm good, so that means I'm going to go here and go do this. No. Because once I started defining the algorithms, or I made the videos on my TikTok now, when I started defining how I defined money, the basis of how I define money, and I broke it down. I was talking about the way that I define money, or how I made money, was based upon the pressure of being accepted, was based upon the pressures of my rejection wounds and my guilt wounds. So that's how I learned. That's what triggered me for money. So when it became a stressful situation, of course, when I was stressed out, I could go do the same things that I always did to go get to the bag. I could go hustle. But as we're breaking this down, the hustle mentality is of the lack mentality. Just think about when you say it. If I lose it, I'm going to get it right back. In between that, where's your assessment? That hustle mentality, that getting what you want mentality, that's based on that excessive need for something. It's coming from a space of lack. So that's how I defined money. That's how I used to define money. I defined getting money or attracting money based on a point of lack. So everything inside of my space had to be based in the lack for me to continue getting that stream. See, when you're doing that internal work, when you're doing this internal work, you have to start, it's everything. When you're going into the assessment, it's everything. When you get emotional and you start thinking about the healing process, the things that are coming up, those are the things being told to you that, yo, those are the things that you need to work on. You're not doing this based on I'm doing it. You're shifting the mentality. There's a lot of narratives that are inside of our DNA that we have to really look at. Like, one big narrative is, I'm doing this because. One of the biggest narratives of thinking about, like, my mother saying things to me of, I did this because you needed school clothes. I did this because you needed money for a field trip. I did this because. When you get stuck in that is a possessive. Think about the grammar. That is a possessive. That's possessive grammar. I did this because of. That is possessive grammar. In ownership of the external, based on possession. So you're not taking account. So you're not assessing, not taking accountability. So, but when you shift into the spaces, I'm doing this for. When you're doing it for. That's what shifts into the aspects of that when we talk about gratitude. When you're doing things for. Like, my ultimate goal is to be able to tell my story in every single space. Whenever something comes up inside of a space, my ultimate goal is to be able to tell my story from a full sense of ownership. Not from a sense of lack, or this is why this happened, or from the traumatic space, but I want to be able to say, so everything that I do is based on that aspect, from that confident level of being able to own everything inside of my story. To have no regrets. That's when my immunity is now cultivated to become the highest. Because I'm owning my story. I'm owning both sides of that coin. I'm not just picking one side I'm not only picking based on the bias of what serves me at a point in time. Because when you think about the lower aspect, I did that shit all the time. If it served me a purpose, then yeah, I'm gonna use it. But I didn't understand some of the things that I was using. So if you're think about, let's go back to your job, friendships, relationships, anything of that narrative. Every friendship, every relationship that you had, it was a benefit. It was a benefit to whether it was a traumatic response or something that every time that you are not willing to take the full ownership and the full assessment, this is what I mean by you create a responsibility. Every time where you were not willing, and the spirit was like, oh, you're not willing to do the work that you need to do? All right, let me stop you real quick. It creates that responsibility inside of your space. But due to the lack of emotional intelligence, and why you're doing things based on how you learned how to operate, the original operation agreement, you sitting inside of your space and you're thinking like that's the only way that you can peace. You're thinking that's the only way that you can operate because that's your operation system. You need that stimulation 24. You need that type of stimulation. In the podcast, we got deep into that aspect of if you wake up and you seek stimulation as soon as you wake up outside of yourself, that means you seek something outside of you before you get in tune with yourself. Then when you go to sleep, you're going to do the same thing. See, it's two sides of that same coin. How you wake up is how you're going to go to sleep. How you move throughout your day, I talked about it. It's the videos up on my TikTok channel, TikTok now, when I was talking about the ideas or the eyes, the identity you're trying to maintain. The ideal of the identities you're trying to maintain. The events that you subscribe to are based on those ideals that you're trying to maintain. The things that you're not facing. Therefore, the people that come into your space, they're based on the behaviors and the actions. So just because you sat there and waved some sage around, but then you went and spent the whole day at somewhere because you're led to where you need to go. The energy, think about it like this. You burn the sage, you clear out your house. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Because you thought about burning sage before you left the house. You thought about burning sage before you left the house. All of a sudden, now you get in the car, you go for a walk, or however you get to where you need to get to. And then all of a sudden, you end up at all of a sudden your phone ring, and then it's that, and then you out and about with, and now you come back to your house, or you're outside in that space because you're still attached to that energy. That energy is of you. The simple factor, that the subtle factor and point, that when you burnt sage in your house, that you felt antsy, that you felt anxious to leave your house. The sage was letting, the spirits are letting you know, nigga, it's you. You got that shit inside of you. See, this when we talk about this level of honesty, that is forcing you to remove the entitlement and those expectations. Because if you're not true, if everything that you're trying to do is not going to be based upon the hustle mentality is the lack mentality. You're stepping into a space where you're coming into alignment. Your alignment, that's you becoming the asset to yourself. The asset understands when to release. The asset know when you have an asset inside of your hand, similar, think about the stock exchange. Let's use the stock exchange, cryptocurrency as an example. When you put in an asset, and a stock is an asset, and you put the money into that, you put the money into that space. I want you to think about this. At a certain point in time, while you sitting inside of that space, you know when to pull it out, and you know when to keep it in there. But your emotions got you pulling back and forth on that stock. It's because somewhere inside of you, you're still defining yourself as a liability. You're going into spaces based on, because there's certain things that you haven't released. That's why this is the thing. When we're defining money, when you're defining the energetic root to the things that you're doing inside of your space, when you're defining money, when you're defining the new aspects of yourself, when you're doing the defining of your new energy, it requires release. That means you can do it right now. You can do a whole fucking candle ritual right now and talk about you're prosperous. And I've told y'all before about you don't become prosperous. You're already prosperous. You don't become abundant. You're already abundant. You don't become wealthy. You're already wealthy. You don't become healthy. You're already healthy. Your standard in your health is what is going to come to the surface. So that means, because it can be something as simple as you said, okay, you did your ritual, and then you sat there and you said you thinking about getting your health back in line, and then you sitting there with yourself, and you like, let me sit back real quick. All of a sudden, you try to go eat something that you know you going to go eat something, and all of a sudden now your ass coughing up and mad and mucus and throwing up everywhere. Your body is letting you know, hey nigga, you just activated us. You just activated all the cells inside of your body and said, yo, we is on go mode. You are on go mode. Let's go. Let's do this work. That's what you keep telling yourself. But if you're not doing it from that space of a clear intent, that means you're not ready to release. That fragment cannot come back to you. See, a lot of times when you doing this work, that fragment it's like, okay, there's a God of War 3. Is it 3? God of War 3. Kratos goes to Hades. Kratos goes to Hades. We're going to use the video game. Kratos goes to Hades. Goes to hell. He has to go fight Hades. Hades is in this dark ass fucking Colosseum looking shit, and then he has to keep chopping off pieces of Hades. He has to keep chopping off pieces of Hades. Now he has to keep Hades from getting to these pieces. So he has to keep fighting these pieces and helping them dissolve so he can take that life force energy. That's the best way to explain when you going into this space with yourself and you're now building up your immune system. Because just like in the same damn video game, when Kratos falls into hell and he falls into the river Styx, and all of a sudden the spirits are pulling him, taking all his power away. That's what's happening to you when you start taking these steps. All of your power is being ripped away from you. Everything that you've ever had has to be ripped the fuck away. There is none of this, because I did this shit from the aspect of, As long as I do just enough, I ain't got to release my precious energy. But in reality, I didn't define it yet. That's all it was. You can't release what you have not yet defined. You can't release what you have not yet defined. See, a lot of times you be sitting in spaces like, but my energy good. Okay, define good. Define good. Define how it served. Define how it served you. Define it. Define it for me. That's when you sitting in that space. That's when you sitting in the middle of your fucking bed. That's when you sitting in your living room in the middle of the night. And all of a sudden you sitting there in the dark and you listening to the first Kid Cudi album and you realizing like, nigga, what was I doing this entire time? That's when you start realizing that shit with yourself. You like, but my life was supposed to be this way, but it didn't happen. Why? That's why that job stopped calling me, or that's why I got let go from my job. You start realizing the benefits of you coming into alignment. See, because of the traumatic experience, the traumatic shit that's happened, you're used to your system being overridden. I talked about this in the podcast. You're used to your system being overridden. You're used to overriding the sequence that's natural to yourself. You're used to overriding the sequence because it gives you that stimulation. You seeking stimulation for the lack of charge of yourself. There is a difference when it comes to that balance. Because remember, it doesn't start from below and goes above. It starts from up here and it trickles down. I talked about that Friday in the lecture. You came down here on a fall, but you trying to ignore I'm trying to ascend and you ain't descended yet. I talked about it like probably a few lectures ago. I can't remember the lecture of it. But I was talking about some of y'all, based on the fall of you not doing the internal work yet, you think your crown chakra's up here. You think your crown chakra's up here. But you out of alignment. Your root chakra's up here. If you got survival on your mind, this is where your root chakra's at. This is when you got to take the dive into hell to go get your crown. You got to go take that dive to go get that crown, to go get your helm. That means you got to go down to bring your crown, to raise your crown back up. You got to take your crown. You got to take your crown and get polished. Based in confidence, based in your sacral chakra, your sacral. You got to ignite the power in the jewels and understand the knowledge and start applying those jewels to your shit to unlock your power. You must sit there at the crossroads with yourself and own your crossroads. Own all paths that led to you to that point. You got to be able to speak that shit. And anything that's coming up is how you speak it. And anything up to how you speak it. You got to accept what you're speaking. You got to that assessment before you even can see it and visualize it. See, oh my God, see, we were kings once. We were queens. I never stopped being a king or a queen. We were gods once. We were goddesses. I never stopped being a god. See, when you're thinking about from this amnesia mindset, you start externalizing shit all the fucking time. So you're not really doing the work. You're doing just enough to stay exactly where you're at. In the last segment in the podcast, when that shit came through, I'm gonna say it now. All of the old paradigm is dead. The old paradigm is done. The way that you used to do shit is not gonna work anymore. The way that you used to come in, the way that you used to use certain elements inside of your space is not gonna work anymore. The way that you used to react based in fights and arguments and your patterns, they're not going to work anymore. The reason that they're not going to work anymore is because the shadow is right here in your face. The shadow is right here. There's no more veil. There's no more partition. There's no more partition. That means everything that you do, you going to feel immediately. Bobby Hemmett talked about that shit the best. He was talking about the judgment of the heart. You gonna feel that shit immediately. The moment that something separates from you that needs to be separated, immediately you gonna feel it. Remember, I talked about it on Friday. That shit is, the emotion is subtle. It's everything that you've used to define that emotion that's heavy. That's what's falling away. You wanting to do things a certain way inside of that shit, it doesn't work that way anymore. You're wanting to make things happen in that, it doesn't work that way anymore. You're wanting to, but back in 1996 or 2012 and 2008, I was out here hustling and making all the money and making the bag. I want you to think about this. Drug dealers now ain't even making the same amount of money. The inflation on dope on the block has went up. That means they got to do more work for less product. That is that's a reflection of your work. It ain't working no more. The way that yesterday's price is not today's price. But I still want to do it. You can't do it the same way no more. You're noticing it don't work. You're noticing that it falls. You're sitting there trying to, I'm going to show him, I'm going to show her, and it ain't working. That motherfucker just sitting there looking at you going on about their business. You're sitting there putting up a post on your face. You putting a post up, motherfucker looking at your post, and the motherfucker just going by your post. The motherfucker that used to invest into that post. Because that shit, this flight jacket healing bullshit ain't working no more. This, I'm going to do it ain't working no more. You have to give more. See, now that your shadow is denser, you got to give more to get here. That means everything, I've talked about this before. We're going to get deep into it on Friday. We're going to get deep into this on Friday. But you're thinking that just because you can maintain your basics while the shadow was at 7, now it's at the 12 density, while your shadow was in that veil and the veil was very pertinent, you thought maintaining your basics was your standard. So that meant you thought that was a qualification. That ain't how it worked. That ain't how it worked. You're looking at the results in front of you. What do you think as above, so below is? The divine masculine knows, the divine masculine, such as myself, humbly to that, direction, direct and gentle. I ain't gotta yell. I ain't gotta bark. I ain't gotta get, I don't have to go there because I'm already there. There's that difference. Like when you think about, so like you looking down as below, that's what everybody would call a high value man based on the physical principle. But I let go of all of those things because all of those were based on how I defined my energy, how I needed things inside my space, how we were going to do this work inside my space, how it was going to work. Well, if I got this and you got this, then we got this and cool. No. Because that's possession. Because now that always goes back to what I said earlier in the beginning of this. You sitting there with yourself in that space, thinking that thinking that you're going through a sense of ownership without accountability, that's nothing but possession. You thinking that, oh yeah, but I did this and time served don't count up here. Time served don't work up here. I came down here. My second lifetime, after my first life down here, I came down here on the work release program. I knew I was dangerous. They knew I was dangerous. But every time that I came down here, in every cycle of I was reforming myself. I was learning. I was like, nigga, all I gotta do is come down here and do my work. I gotta sit down here and do what I need to do. Gratitude. Yeah, like everybody wants to think about, yo, we gotta ascend first. We're trying to ascend and raise the consciousness. Ain't none of y'all accepted the fall. If you look at the spiritual community, motherfuckers ain't accepted the fall. They made some nice posters and some nice trinkets. They made some nice, but you haven't accepted that fall. If you still out here real life, if you still out here battling, saying that the white man is the enemy and they trying to destroy you, and if you still out here, the people, the behavior, the reaction, your children, what have you been doing? They're your children. See, if you want to come down here and be the God mind, because the God, here's the thing about being the God and the goddess, that's just the mindset. That's what sits here. That's Shiva, that's Baphomet, that's Buddha, that's Lord Christ, that's who sits here at this point. See, once you've done this, now you have to upgrade and go up here. That's where your immunity works. You're building your immunity to be able to last in that space up there, so the ether don't burn your ass. That's why every time you have a dream and that dream be wild and you waking up, you feeling hot, feeling crazy, because your immune system ain't up there yet. There's still some shit you need to release. There's still some shit you need to release to come up there. That's why in your below, the motherfuckers that trigger you, that you always making you feel like you smaller than yourself, they're not making you feel smaller than yourself. What they're doing is they're deflecting the projection that you used to put out, because people used to hit you with that. People used to hit you with, like, when you told motherfuckers that you was insecure, and they were like, it's okay, baby, I'm insecure too, but you make me well worth it. And you accepted that. But now in reality, it's like, yo, we both have our insecurities. Let's sit down and talk about our insecurities. See, you're going past the point of the comfort zone. Remember, that's why I always talk about reaction is comfort. As long as you're reacting, you're comfortable. That means as long as if someone hit me up and tell me about my standard, how I'm moving, how I'm talking, now that means when someone tells me about how I'm moving, that means I need to assess my steps. That means when I come back into that space and someone's talking about how I'm moving, as long as I'm assessing my steps, I can see that it is a projection. That doesn't make it any less of a lesson, but it's still, I'm inside of my steps. Someone talking about how I'm moving, that means I need to step back and look at my steps. Because apparently they're noticing something. That means I need to take that assessment and be honest inside of that space. That means I don't go off the handle and be like, yo, these motherfuckers out here trying to play. No need. Because if I'm truly inside of that position, I ain't got to worry about it. If I'm in that position, I ain't got to worry about it. I can watch the shit happen. Watch it play out. But you got to be able to accept that. That starts with, because the first training grounds of that in your let's say K through 5. Let's say K through 5. Since you're going back to since you're going back to the mystery school. Let's say K through 5. K through 5 is when you're dealing with your family members. No, K through 5 is when you're dealing with your friends. Because remember, K through 5 in elementary school is when you were learning how to make friends. So the first people that you're going to deal with is your friends. 6th grade, when you graduated from elementary school and you went from 6th to 8th grade, 6th to 9th, now you came into the graduation stage, your adolescent phase, that's when you're going to start noticing you bucking with your parents. That's when you're going to start realizing you bucking with your parents. And then after that stage, and you were bucking with your parents, now you start bucking with the relationships, your job. Remember, this shit don't stop. Let me read this. Hit me up in my inbox. Hit me in my inbox after the live. You're changing. You're removing. You're assessing. You're pulling all of this shit out. You're pulling all of this out. Not just a little bitty pieces. Not just pieces that, okay, well, I learned this in one relationship and it worked, so that time served don't count. You can't, this is what's going to happen. This is what happens to a lot of people. This is what happened to a lot of people. You think because of time served, that's entitlement and intention, without checking your credit score, your track record, your emotional credit score, your shadow scores, your credit score with yourself. You think that you gonna go into that? You think you gonna go into Neiman Marcus and go get some shit because you went to Neiman Marcus one time and you went and copped something from there, and they let you buy it because you went in there and got some cologne or you got some perfume, but you noticed there were no purses in there. But now you getting mad because you weren't that much. I walk out in some regular shit, I walk out and that shit, I walk out in some regular shit and you like, let's use the example. I walk out with the Mark Zuckerberg on, plain white tee, outfit, you think that shit cheap? My shit $500 a piece? My shit $5,000 a piece? The wardrobe is different, but cause you used to a label. See, that label what gets a lot of motherfuckers fucked up. Oh, we going in. That label's what get a lot of motherfuckers, you waiting for a label. You waiting for the label. So the same way that you treat the God title, the same way that you accept the God title is the same way that you wait. Now that I'm a God, now I'll do God things. You are already a God. That's like similar to your lower aspects of yourself. When I tell people all the time that I married myself August 16, 2020. August 16, 2020. I made that ceremony myself. I made it official. That's you're changing the narrative. If you're not that for yourself first, if you're not taking accountability of the matrimony with yourself, then every time you go outside of your space, you're going to use that as a possession. You're going to use what you do as well, when this happens and this happens and this happens, then I'll do this. Meanwhile, what does it matter if the motherfucker's already doing it? See, that's the alignment. See, a lot of shit don't really hit me no more because I know that I'm in my alignment of my space. A lot of things are because I'm in alignment with my space. And the hardest, some of the deepest things for me, like those deep roots aspects, is allowing myself to let it go. Allowing myself to sit in that, okay, let it do what it need to do. I ain't even got to do anything. That's that presence. That's that power of your presence. See, a lot of you keep getting blocked because you keep like, ooh, I'm going to go pick this up while I go out, ooh, shit, the feeling come up and then you like, okay, cool, I'm going to go get something to eat. No, go sit your ass back, fuck down. Your old routine ain't going to work no more. That old way you used to stimulate yourself ain't going to work no more. It never really worked. It was an illusion that it worked because you had things around you that made it look like it would work, like it was working. Because you had something that was in comparison to it. So the relationship worked because you had others around you that didn't have jobs. The friendship worked because you had other friendships and other aspects of friendships with others that used to work. So like, okay, at least mine's, because the best thing that you said it to yourself and said it honestly. What did you say? At least I'm not like them. At least my relationship's not like that. At least my job is not doing me like that. But then all of a sudden, your job went downhill. Because you looked at that based from a lack mentality, so you had to attract that next. Because you didn't have gratitude when you looked at it. Because you ain't never spoke to yourself in gratitude. You can look at somebody and what they're doing there. You look at somebody with their works, no matter what their works is. And you're coming to that ability with yourself based on your heart being clear that you can really look at other people and be like, yo, I like what you're doing. And you can walk on about your business. I like how you moving. I like what you're doing. I can understand what you're doing. I like your process. And just keep going on about your business. Because the moment that you look at somebody and you got that jealousy on your heart, you got that insecurity still playing on your heart, and you see somebody doing some shit or making moves that you wish you could have made 4 years earlier, but you had a chance to do it 4 years earlier because you was in that relationship and you was in a relationship with old buddy, and just because old buddy supported the shit out of your ass in ways that were necessary for your growth, gave you exactly what you needed, may not have had all the bags in the world, but that motherfucker gave you what he wanted and worked hard. But since you are, because you still got that sexual trauma sitting on the table, you're now threatened by anybody that is teaching you emotion from the masculine seat. Because I talked about it in the podcast. Y'all still stuck on man and women, male and female. A lot of y'all have, when we're thinking about men that have mother issues, it's not the mother issue inside of that. We don't get deep into this throughout the week. They have mother issues, but it's not from their mother. It's from the feminine aspect. That means the way that they saw their father, because their father had mother wounds, maternal wounds, and how their father couldn't provide the space for them to learn to express their emotions in a balanced way. But you want to kick it off and say they didn't know nothing about their mother. But their mother, since their father was in the wounds of the feminine seat, what do you think the mother's going to take the position in? She's going to automatically take the masculine seat. And that's when you think about hypersexualization and all of the other shit. So you're thinking about the basis of sexual traumas. Because a lot of, if you were touched by Uncle Rerun and Deacon Smith and all of them, they were sitting in they're sitting in a broken feminine seat. They needed you to feed. Same thing, vice versa. They're not sitting in the masculine seat. They're sitting in the opposite seat. That's why they needed you to feed. See, a lot of that shit, a lot of the stigmas that you got stuck, it's niggas' fault and it's men's fault and women's fault. You still stuck in that lower level with yourself. That's why y'all go look at a nigga like Kevin Samuels and get mad every single time. That's why you go look at him. That's why the same motherfuckers that are mad at Kevin Samuels are the same motherfuckers that love Derrick Jackson. When we talking about in this lower aspects of shit. The same motherfuckers that have all of the love and adoration for when we're talking about the master teacher, Brother Panic, don't like Young Pharaoh. So you denying one side when they both two sides of the same coin. You gotta let your ego, you gotta release that ego. Because if you don't like it, what do you not like about yourself? Where inside of yourself have you tried to intellectualize your life? See, these are those levels when you're coming into your immunity. Your spiritual immunity. Your growth. You're shifting. You're changing. You're becoming. These are the shits that are being shed as you coming into your growth, as you going into your descent, as you doing this work. These are the things that you have to face. If you ain't fake, what are you doing? If you don't have it's okay. It's okay. Let me break this. It's okay. As long as you are making the honest with your heart. And it's the quickest way to start opening up your heart. As long as you are being honest with yourself in the intent that you set in your heart, that you're ready to face your darkness. That's why I'm here. That's why you'll see me. That's why you'll see Mama Oye, which is in the comments. That's why you'll see certain healers like us coming to the space. That's why you'll see us. Certain healers come around for certain aspects because we're true guys. But if you're not true to the aspects of your heart, you're going to attract the flim-flam motherfuckers that want to feed off of your energy. You're going to grab either you're going to get what you are or get where you're at. That true honesty with yourself is going to force you to sit where you are. Not think about where you're trying to go to or where you're trying to be at. I desire you to be the fucking best. Always, I'm going to desire you to be the motherfucking best. Everything from the consultation, setting up the consultation, all spiritual services. Hit me up in the inbox. Remember this shit. Embrace it. That this healing is destructive. You are deserving, but you are not entitled. And the level of honesty you're about to dive into is going to destroy every single mirror that you got hanging up on the wall, trying to keep that appearance so you can step into your presence. I love you. We love us. Ashe.